A careful observer of the times in which we live will realize one thing: the world is at war. There is an ongoing war for the soul of the world. That desire to control man in all aspects of our lives should be a wake-up call to all men. An aspect of this ongoing battle is discussed herein. Throughout the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries, the followers of Christ were targeted and persecuted. Beginning from Christ himself and especially after his death, his followers were banned from preaching, praying, or worshiping through him and in his name. Indeed, his name was banned, and anyone found using his name was arrested, thrown into prison, or killed. Interestingly, some of these laws were made by worshippers of God. The Jews, through the Sanhedrin, Pharisees, and Sadducees, hounded the followers of Christ from Jerusalem and all other cities where Jews were. The early Christians went through brutal persecution for their faith at the hands of the Romans during the early 1st up to the 3rd centuries. The blood of thousands was spilt for no crime other than their faith. All the sufferings of Paul in heathen lands were instigated by Jews and not Gentiles. Subsequently, the Romans took over from the Jews and banned all forms of Christianity from the empire, forcing Christians into hiding. Such persecutions and ostracism have been prophesied to recur in these last days, and slowly but surely it is creeping in. Already several countries have made laws that ban praying in Jesus' name in schools or public places. There are several news reports in which teachers or students who did so have been punished. Has a similar fate befallen Muslims using Muhammad's name, to Buddhists using Buddha's name, or to Hindus using Brahman's name? I have not heard of such an incident, yet it happens to Christians in so-called Christian or Western countries. Of all religions, Christianity has suffered the most persecution since its inception, first under the Romans, then later under fellow Christians, the Catholic Church and Anglican Church. Even today, many Christians are still suffering for their faith in Muslim lands and other Christian countries. Here, the Waldensians in Italy and other parts of Europe were chased away from their homes by the church and state for having their own Bibles and not conforming to the Catholic Church. Statues or sculptures describing Christ, or the 10 Commandments, have been removed from many courtrooms, schools, and other public spaces. Preachers are banned from publicly preaching about Christ in many countries, not just in Islamic ones. You cannot post or preach against practices that the Bible frowns upon. For instance, people who have stood up for biblical teachings against homosexuality have been targeted, dismissed from their jobs, or removed from social media. Whilst laws upon laws are being made to protect sinful practices and those who champion such agendas, laws are also being made to criminalize those who stand for Christian morality and views. Sadly, such laws are made even in so-called Christian countries. While Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and other religions are respected and cherished, Christianity is often trampled on and repressed. Dare to speak in favor of creation or of God against evolution, and you will see your end. Make strong appeals for biblical morality and call homosexuals to repentance, and you will feel the angst of Satan. Throughout the United States, Christian monuments are being attacked and removed through court orders from public spaces. Yet, other activities that are contrary to humanity and natural law are being promoted and protected by the courts. Now is the time for God's people to show themselves true to principle. When the religion of Christ is most held in contempt, when his law is most despised, then should our zeal be the warmest and our courage and firmness the most unflinching. To stand in defense of truth and righteousness when the majority forsake us, to fight the battles of the Lord when champions are few, this will be our test. At this time we must gather warmth from the coldness of others, courage from their cowardice, and loyalty from their treason. The nation will be on the side of the great rebel leader." End quote. The early Christians stood for their faith and pressed forward in spreading the gospel despite the threats and deaths. They dared to fight and die for God. By their blood they sealed their testament and faith in God. By their silence they won over millions of hearts and spoke for the gospel through their courage in death. In this beautiful quotation above is a rallying call for all who fear the Lord to prepare for the worst and be determined to shine through the approaching darkness. When everything that is righteousness shall be criminalized and evil shall rule, just mark the waymarks. Be watchful unto prayer, and as God saved Israel from Egypt, so shall he save his people from the approaching darkness. Behold the tragic execution of Thomas Cranmer, Nicholas Ridley, and Hugh Latimer in Oxford during the reign of Mary I. These Oxford martyrs fought the battles of the Lord. They did not keep quiet in the midst of opposition. Will we follow in their steps? May the love and peace of God surround us on this Sabbath, a peaceful, happy Sabbath to all the saints of God.